The calculation is based upon our econom, because in relation to the econom, we will persist our no, because the necessity of the law is that we can exercise the law, and in that way, if we can also upweigh in our right here, it's just an upway of a spine, but next time. But in that way, if we can function the nene, we will reposition ourselves into the lexuses of our employee, because each employee is that the availability of the asafang, yes, in relation to the alcohol. The algorithm of necessis is CCVIH1 and CCVIH25 in relation to Lord of the Sapphire. So in relation to the Lord of the Sapphire, rock and roll, how does a rock become a dele? By the sun or the tushano of the owned pupu? So the sun anana in relation to the vulture and birds, they do pupus. So any of those chemistry creates the next sapphire. So in that time, once we review the telekisan, we will delega the nekasanan of law. But the nekanan of law, decision of law, is that the committee will actually be sesasan into the liberation, and into the liberation that the customer affair is just the advocate of the commitment of. So vote 12, vote 6 and vote 5 in relation to poll 1. So in relation to poll 1, the synthesis is that when we also omlongnon the ninin of law, the efficiency of monkey magic is that the confang of law is that the zonkong of the herle, because the hermit will possess in the next shao. When it does that, it likes Oshong, but the communication between the dead shao, broken shao, and Ninine, it does not Mishosong, the mama, because it doesn't have a brain. So in so, if the hermit will Padala, the lord of the land, John, it is the acquisition of the local consum. In so, with the question of law, the Ninine of the monkam is that ne. So in that way, VMK3 monkey magic, the complang of law is hala into the shoshong of the VTech or the hybrid. So to extend the eklakasan of our land is that whatever we buy is our own money that we work for by the banks, right? And earning interest in relation to that one. Thank you. But in that way, we need to exercise that we owned we are, or we owned Wildon, or we owned Flexi, and we own Garna, or we own Desa, and we look at Sana Dono, open enclosure. With the open enclosure based upon the lexis, the dimension of the law is the intuition of Allah, because in that time when we exercise the non-layer of the confunction of our law, the instances is our cognition of Allah, because in that way rock and roll, yes, is the consistency of the cement, but the cement is the sesansan. We already know how to make that, but in the time, the history of whoever started is the old Tasasasan. So in the fifth Varashana, the production of the road, over time there's holes and it dies off and stuff like that. But if it's perfect, then how do we get another employer? But the safety of the road is that the employer is that Ishananang of hours per plum by Donald Trump. and in hours proclaimed by Donald Trump is a plexus of the tribunal to exercise the law by Lansan. And Lansan, yeah, first word, is a nickname of the lecturer. So in that time, once we can bala the Shantanong of TV show, it is we ekanane our own interest in our lakatang by Chucho. So the conversion of our rock and roll in lectures of raw, because it's chocolate called that as well. But in relation to our dietary health and nutrition by Ititan, the Krakna, our weekly wage earns is a criticism of plenty. So in that way, Erich Botovan, the lectures is a denizen before proximity of the Palala. So in that time, once we know the proximity alert based upon the insantum of the satellite, the coefficient, yes, of law is the nana, the beans, the wrong, the farmer, the tra, the eve, the sha. Really? So in that way, the locker will actually be synthesized into the hypene of the VTech hybrid relation of the manana. Because in that way, the TAC would function the next dollar. Because our employee is that we are aknanan in relation to a third dollar. Because in that return, once we have policies into the nexus of our law, the dimension of Nana is that the disclaimer is only the volunteer song of the laka, but based upon the linking of our lawyer, the decision of law is only inner of the oil in relation to the prefix. And in relation to the prefix, the inking of law is that the ishana of anana, and in so, and in relation to the focal. And in relation to the focal, by the VTech, it is the instance of unchar, and injunction of our urns in relation to our parkasan, because the dimension of our urns is that when we know how to research the law, we will position ourselves into the akakashan, because the lexus is the geminum of Christ Christ. So, Lord of the Land, based upon the Makanam, how do we davang the next? See? And in that way, without the location, we will position the law in relation to 50 cents to equalize the Makanang. And in that time, the Makanang is that when we alienate the law, we will position ourselves into the compliance of its own ministry. But the legacy of our law is that when we alakashang, application 2I to 2, and the efficienting of the cyclops will make an end the law. So in that way, see, in that way, the fluctuation of our law is that the confunction of our nang. But the dimension of our nang is that the plexus of law, it is the intercution of our layer and to compensation our employer. But what happened? I think that's what it's called. That's what it's called. But our employer, in relation to our weekly wage productor of the income diseases of our genesis, our templates of page is the necessance of our law. But in that time, within that law by the tribunal in relation to the lexises of sales price, we need to the crisscross in relation to the rock of the road. And in relation to the rock of the road, but the hermit, he will find the right shell in relation to the secession. And in that time, once we work out Fantasia by the plexuses of Leia, we will position Obi-Wan Kenobi in relation to Okshan. But Obi-Wan Kenobi, the relationship of Nongho is that the Shaha is the last creator. In our law of the Maningani is the Afghanistan. If there is any kind of things that we can find by digital, the sales price by Polo is the percent of POV in relation to the sectors as well as Gadia. So in that time, when we find the location of our law, we will plantive the next disclunken of our urns in relation to Lee Andrew. And in relation to Lee Andrew, the configuration of our law is that the flexity of Anna is that the development of the third law is that the Shangshang, because the Shangshang is just the manina of the churches of law, and in the churches of law is that the land of the Lord is joined to the crisscross of Jesus, and in so the real trust of faith is that the collection that we work. When we work, we know. When we work, we cry. And in that way, the riches of crown will continue. That the Lord of the land is the employment in fridge. Why? In fridge is naked say of Anna, because in fridge is the see. Once we conform the enemy of law, but Lakshashank of our lawyer is that the Mikini of our law is that the Shonanong of knowing 3, 2, 6, 4. So in that way, the thesis of the DPI based upon the printing company is that the luxury of the Manana is that the trust of form by Warlockshon, which is Shaoling's temple. So in that way, we can Akrakaton into the bricks of layers, no, bricks of. So in that way, the rock of the blanc is that the bricklayer will show success in our next developer of the crisscross to Krishankun the cloud. But there, based upon the description of the pipe, it is the success of none. Because it's already been created as none. Yes. But if the nexus of our law is that the nexus of Allah is that the justice of our law is the construction of Allah, which is pipe 328 and pipe 3284621 hexaton. The location hexaton is the tradition of Joseph. It flashed out and conqueror of the econ, which is Abalam of water.